Visa interviews. This is a huge question lots of people are wondering about for 2023. I know the last couple of years have been crazy. A lot of changes with the pandemic and also changes with immigration. And so we're going to help you, especially as travel and life gets back to normal, to be most prepared for your visa interview, especially with trying to come to America. So this webinar is all about big changes and the big questions that you guys have for visa interviews in 2023. Welcome to this live webinar. I am Rob with Chine Coaching, and we're thrilled to have this live session to help you guys out in big ways in finding success. Chine Coaching started helping international students and has grown to impact people all over the world. I myself lived abroad for several years in India. I've traveled all over the world, and I know that visas, I know the challenges myself getting visas, and then I know coming to America, visas continue to be a challenge for all types, student, work, vacations, and we have an expert today to help you guys out. We've got a lot of great topics to cover, and then we're going to do a live Q&A at the end. But I want to introduce our awesome guest, Mandy. Please introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, it's so nice to be back, Rob. I love being here with you all on Chine Coaching. My name is Mandy Fierbacher. I'm from a company called Argo Visa, and I am a former consular officer, also known as a former visa officer. So I spent about 7 years working behind the visa window, interviewing visa applicants who are trying to get to the United States for studies, for tourism, for business, for employment. And so hopefully today we'll get to some of your pressing questions about visa interviews in 2023. So we've seen a lot of changes happen in the last couple of years, and I'm excited to kind of go deep on all the questions that you may have.
Definitely. And just a big warm welcome to everyone who's tuning in from all over the world. We have a special visa interview playlist on the Chine Coaching channel. So if you've got a question, we've probably already answered it in a video, whether it's student visas, C1D, diversity lottery. We keep covering more and more the B1, B2 visas, why you get rejected. So after this webinar, be sure to go check that out. We'll have the link for the playlist. But I want to know where you guys are tuning in from. Let us know. Tell us in the comments right now, where are you tuning in from? I'd love to see which countries, which cities we've got represented here, if you're here in America or other parts of the world. So go ahead and let us know where you guys are tuning in from, because we want to see what awesome audience we have today. We've got Ghana, India. Welcome, friends. Where else? Yeah, tell us your country, your city. I'm here in Texas. Mandy is tuning in from the Bay Area in California. So we're even across the country. But okay, London. Awesome. We've got Ghana again. Great. Where else are you guys tuning in from? And if you guys are watching the replay later on as well, again, tell us in the comments where you guys are tuning in from. Ooh, we got Delhi, Pakistan, Dubai. This is exciting. We got friends from all over the world.
This is my favorite part of the work, Rob.
Yeah.
I just feel like it's so nice to be connected to people from around the world and, all be together, even though we're so far away from each other.
Yeah. And while I worked in India for several years and I've been to 30 countries around the world, Mandy, where did you serve as a consular officer?
Yes. So I started my career with the State Department at the U.S. Embassy in Beijing, China, where we regularly interviewed about 150 visa applicants a day per officer. So as you can imagine, it was a very, very large embassy, very busy consular section. From there, I went to the U.S. consulate in Matamoros, Mexico, right on the border. And so that was really interesting because I encountered a lot of border issues. So, for people who are studying in Texas, for example, if you don't want to go all the way back to your home country, a lot of times people will actually drive across the border and do their visa interview there. There's positives and negatives about that. I think I might have, even done a video with Rob about that. But important to know that, those are situations where you really want to be extra prepared because you don't want to get stuck on the other side of the border and not be able to get back if there's administrative processing or anything like that. And so that was a really, really interesting tour, especially for all the students from Texas, thinking that they could just, get their visas the same day. That doesn't always happen, and it could be problematic.
Yeah. I see we got people here from Ecuador, Greenland, so cool.
Wow.
Someone else from the Bay Area, Texas, Nigeria. India again, all over. So welcome, friends. Antigua, Bermuda, very cool. We have a global audience, which is exciting. So we're going to jump right in. I know we want to get to all your questions in our time, but our first topic to cover, Mandy, is we had some big shocks in 2022, this last year. So help people understand maybe what were some big things that made challenges for visa interviews from this last year. Maybe we can learn from those things as we go ahead this year.
Yeah, I think that the biggest shock for a lot of people is that the pandemic is still kind of around. I think a lot of people were hoping, in 2021, 2022, that we would be kind of moving past the pandemic. Visa appointments would be widely available around the world, and that hasn't really been the case. Now, there are some positive elements of it. We just got numbers yesterday, for example, that there were over close to 7 million non-immigrant visas that were issued in fiscal year 2022 versus 2 million, about 2.7 million that were issued in 2021. So that has pretty much tripled. And I know that the State Department is putting so much effort and emphasis on trying to get visa appointments more widely available, get those visa backlogs down, get you guys to be able to get a reasonable time for your visa interviews. And I know so many of you are looking for visa appointments every day. Some people are hitting refresh and trying to see when they can get a visa interview. And, there is more help on the way. And there's a lot of emphasis right now on this from the US government. And we're seeing that, they have done really well last year. And I think that improvement will continue to be seen this year as they, hire more people, more consular officers, as it becomes safer to travel again. But it is a work in progress, and it's probably not moving as fast as some of you would like. And so, so again, keep in mind that it's not as easy as you may expect. But one other thing that I really want to emphasize is that 1 in 4 visa applicants are still denied their visas. And that always comes as a shock to people. Everybody is like, oh, I know people who get visas, but also you probably know somebody who's been denied their visa. And if you're a student visa applicant, 1 in 3 student visa applicants are denied. Or put
Wow.
into administrative processing. Yeah, I mean, that's really shocking because I think most visa applicants go into their visa interview not expecting to get denied, not expecting to go, to be delayed by administrative processing. But these are very real numbers and very real statistics from the State Department's website.
Those are great things to know about, especially, because some of those can still trickle into this next year and are going to impact what we're going to be seeing happening in 2023. So based on some of those shocks, the lingering pandemic, Mandy, what do you think are going to be some of the most difficult visas for people to obtain in 2023? Which ones are going to have a shortage, be more challenging, be more scrutinized? How can people be more careful and aware to be well prepared? Some are easy, some are hard,
Yeah, I think so. There's 2 issues there. I think the toughest visas to get in 2023, just because of shortage of visa appointment availability, are going to be your B1, B2 visas. I did a quick search yesterday just to see what those wait times look like right now. And so, for example, if you're applying in a country like India, you need to wait 575 calendar days if you're applying for a B1, B2 visa for tourism or for business, which is
Say that number again.
575 calendar days.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's just like mind blowing. And keep in mind that you could potentially qualify for an expedited visa appointment. So, if you have a true emergency, it's possible that you can get it sooner. But yeah, for people around the world, India is going to be a really hard place to get a tourist visa. And so, and it's not much better in other places. If you look at Brazil, if you're applying in Sao Paulo, it's 512 calendar days for a B1, B2 visa. Mexico is even worse. It's 693 calendar days. So the first issue
Wow.
is it's going to be harder to get a visa appointment for tourism or for business. So keep that in mind. Now, when it comes to difficulty in passing your visa interview, I think that some of the harder ones to get are probably going to be your H-1B, your L1s, your O1s, those tend to be the visa categories that are scrutinized by visa officers more because you're
Okay.
going to the US for a specific reason. And also, if I'm from the Bay Area, and I know the tech layoffs have been a big topic of discussion in the last few months. And if you're someone who is in the US on an H-1B visa and you were laid off and you were looking for other options, and maybe you transitioned to a different visa category and you stayed a long time in the US without any sort of visa stamping, and this is true of the pandemic, right? You couldn't get to your home country. That will be scrutinized very closely at your next visa
Mm.
interview. So you want to be extra prepared.
Someone here in the comments asked, "What about UAE? Any special challenges going to be coming from UAE this year? Do you think?"
Yeah, I think, probably just the same challenges at other big consular posts at UAE. The good thing is that they're very used to people with all sorts of different passports applying there.
Hmm.
So
So
if you're someone,
international.
very international. And so if you're someone who can't get a visa appointment in your home country, consider applying at a big embassy or consulate like in the UAE.
Okay. Great. Thanks for kind of forecasting what some of those difficulties and challenges are going to be. Another super common question we get from viewers is, what are questions people can expect? I know there's kind of standard basic questions. Maybe we can highlight a couple of those, but maybe, what are other specific things they're going to be looking for, listening for, and asking people during those interviews?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think the first question everyone should be prepared for at their visa interview is the question, why are you going to the United States? This tends to be the first question asked by a visa officer, some variation of that. And you'll want to be proactive in giving the visa officer some context about why you're going. Now, the questions are going
Mhm.
to differ based on if you're applying to go study in the US or for employment. And so it's going to go on from there. Why are you, which school are you studying at? If you're applying for an
Mm.
F1, if you're applying for an H1B or an L1, tell me about your company. What do you do there? What are some of your responsibilities? These are some of the very common general questions asked for those particular visa categories. If you're applying for an O1, I think visa officers really want to know, what makes you so extraordinary that you qualify for
Mm.
this very special visa category. And you
Mm.
want to be prepared to, give a little pitch about yourself. You don't want to just say, hey, yeah, I'm an O1, I'm an engineer, or I'm a, whatever thing that you're known for. You really want to, I would say, almost give like a little elevator pitch about yourself. You're really selling the visa officer on why you qualify instead of being
Mm.
passive at your visa interview.
Yeah, yeah. And I think too, whatever questions you get, clear communication is so important. I know one of your guys' best tips is, don't just give short one word answers, clear, concise answers, not rambling on, not one word, but also just being able to communicate your story and your reason why. You know, the visa officer has to really understand why and feel like those things are getting answered for those questions, correct?
That's absolutely right, Rob. And you really want to bring a level of confidence to your answer, so that you're not, afraid to meet the eyes of the visa officer. You're prepared, you're ready to go, and you're very sure of yourself about your intentions and your goals in the US.
Definitely, definitely. Friends, we've still got several more topics. We've got live Q&A. If you got a friend who has a visa interview coming up, go ahead and share the link with them right now so they can hop in, because we want to make sure all your pressing questions get answered during the live Q&A at the end. And right now, our chai question for you guys. So for you viewing, what visas are you applying for this year? Go ahead and tell us in the comments, is it F1 student? Is it K1? Is it H1B? Is it a B1, B2? Let us know which visas you're applying for, which visa interviews you have scheduled. We want to see, which topics are going to be most helpful for you guys in these next few months. So go ahead and let's see what we got going on here. All right, we've got B1, B1, B2, F2, spouse visa, F1 student visa, a lot of F1 student visas, C1D. Awesome. So getting to see a cool variety as well. H1B, B1. Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, keep sharing those as we're going to keep diving into the topics here. So I want to see what everyone is going to be wrestling with. Okay. Along with visas, there's immigration changes because immigration changes impact the visas and the visa interviews. So, Mandy, what are any of the major immigration changes, especially with the government and administration? Has changed in the last couple of years. Very different immigration policies in America. So, what do people need to know about and be prepared for?
Yeah, I think the biggest change that I see happening in 2023 is actually more of a practical change. And the Biden administration has basically proposed a massive hike in immigration fees. And so this is something to be aware of, especially if you're applying for a visa in the next couple months. You want to try to get your visa appointment sooner rather than later.
Hmm.
So, for example, the H-1B fees, I think the petition fees for the H-1B visa for USCIS is going to see an increase from 460 US dollars to $780. I mean, that's like an 130% increase, which is kind of
Wow,
crazy.
that's
Um,
expensive.
Very expensive. Same thing for L1. It's going to go from 460 to 1,385. And
No way. Wow.
yeah, yeah. And so, this is all proposed changes. It has not gone into effect yet, but
Okay.
there's speculation that it's going to go into effect May of this year. And of course, you'll hear about it when it does happen. And one more, and the O1 visa fee will go from 460 to $1,055. But
Hmm.
there's not going to be an increase in premium processing fees. I know for some H-1B applicants, you usually do the premium processing to get quicker
Hmm.
responses. Um, and I guess the reason for this is USCIS, the agency that does all of the petitions, it's really cash strapped and it's been really tough on them the
Hmm.
last few years during the pandemic. And they're saying that with this new funding, they're going to be able to dedicate more resources to customer service and things like that. So we'll see if that happens. There is also an expectation that visa processing fees at embassies and consulates will also increase
Okay.
from $160 to $245 for B1, B2s, and F1s. And for your H's and L's, it's going to go from $190 to $310. So again,
Hmm.
this is not in effect quite yet. They were actually saying that this was going to go into effect at the end of last year. It has not happened. I'm not sure about what the delay is. But again,
Hmm.
keep in mind that if you're applying now versus a few months from now, there could be a big price difference.
Okay, save up. I know some of those work visas, obviously the companies cover that, but
Mhm.
make sure you know whether who's going to be responsible for paying for the visas, for the application fees, and you've got the correct budget. It seems like some big changes are coming. Hopefully, the money is actually going to go to make things better,
Mhm.
reduce some of those backlogs, get faster processing, follow up time. So, hoping and praying that those will be good impacts and the money will be, you know, put in the right places to help people trying to come to America.
Yeah, I hope so too, Rob. And I think, another big change that we've seen is that this administration has really put a big emphasis on visa processing and getting those
Hmm.
wait times down. I just posted something on my LinkedIn about how the US embassy and consulates in India actually decided to open up visa appointments on Saturdays for first time visa applicants. And this
Hmm.
actually brings me back to my days as a visa officer because I remember when they used to say, come in on Saturdays and do these Dropbox applications or do these interviews. And, you'd go in with your colleagues and bring a sack lunch and, just plow through those visa interviews. And I think it's really great that they're bringing that program back right now because,
Okay.
so many days, 575 days waiting for a visa appointment just seems very unreasonable. And I think they're really trying to tackle that.
Okay, that's great to know. All right, friends, if this video has been helpful and you're learning something new from Mandy, be sure to hit that like button, say thanks, give some love and thanks to her in the comments as well. And there's more ways to connect with us. I know we've got a few more points to cover, but I just want to share real quick that we're also active on other social media. Argo has an awesome link, or let's see, LinkedIn. I know Mandy's on LinkedIn, like she just mentioned. They're also on Instagram. You guys are on TikTok too, right?
We're on TikTok, we're on
So,
YouTube, we're kind of, everywhere as well. So if you guys have
mhm.
any specific visa questions, we've probably addressed it in a bunch of interviews.
Yeah, they've got great short tips on Instagram and TikTok, great reels. So check those out. Highly recommend them. And then, yeah, Chine Coaching as well. You can find us on Instagram, LinkedIn. We have a great newsletter. that you guys can be subscribed to. So I'm going to these are all going to be in the video description. So make sure you connect with us online on other social media platforms. Okay, another big question, issue, challenge people are worrying about, Mandy, is backlogs and wait times. What do people need to know?
Okay, so what you need to know is you want to get in line as soon as possible. I know I mentioned some of these crazy wait times in places like India and Brazil and Mexico. Um, I'm glad to see that wait times have come down a little bit for places like China, where you can get a visa appointment 13 days for most visa categories, but it's not true for some of the more busy places in the world. So get in line, book that visa appointment, because one thing to keep in mind is that until you actually secure a visa appointment, you can't request to expedite it. So you first have to get a visa appointment, even if it's way later than you want it for. Do that first, and then you can apply for an expedite if you fit the criteria and you have an urgent reason to be in the US. And so, again, this is something that I recommend, you check every day if you're someone who's looking for a visa appointment. I actually have the visa appointment wait times page, bookmarked on my browser just in case I need to, look things up for clients. But keep in mind, you can check that every day, and they're always releasing new appointments. So just because it's a long time today doesn't mean it's going to be the same thing tomorrow or next week.
Yeah, I know that just all of a sudden things can open up. And so you kind of have to be checking, refreshing. I've had friends tell me the stories. They've got like WhatsApp groups where they've got people that go on different shifts and are always checking and refreshing, because maybe in the middle of the night something opens up and you can get something that week instead of months out. And so you kind of have to be diligent. And I wish there was better ways, but it definitely changes quickly sometimes.
Yes, absolutely. And so, wishing everybody the best in securing a visa appointment at the time that they want. If you're someone who is really, wanting to get to the US quickly and you may not qualify for an expedite, consider doing a third country national appointment, which basically means you're applying outside of your home country. There are things that you'll want to prepare for that type of interview. It's going to be unique. It's not going to be the same as applying for your home country, but it might be worthwhile to go somewhere where there's a shorter wait time.
Yeah, and we've done a more in-depth video with Mandy about backlogs, wait times, ways you can pivot, and things you can do. We also have a video about emergency appointments and kind of, getting things done quicker, some of those expedited options. So you can check those out in our visa interview playlist as well to get some more guidance. But unfortunately, yeah, still just trying to catch up from the pandemic. The whole world is kind of still slowly coming back to pace. And unfortunately, government's been a little bit slower to catch up with everything else. And so we're hoping that this year will be a much better year for that, and the wait times will reduce and all that money will help out. So
Absolutely. I hope so too.
yeah, the best thing to do is just plan ahead. The more you can plan ahead, the better off you're going to be. And another way you guys can plan for success is Argo. Argo Visa is one of our Chine Coaching approved partners. And before we jump into the live Q&A, I want Mandy just to share a little bit about the Argo story, because I know they've helped so many people, and maybe they can help you with the problem you're facing right now. So tell us about Argo Visa, Mandy.
Yeah, so Argo is a very unique company. We got started in 2019, and we're a company of former consular officers, former visa officers. And every single one of our former consular officers have made decisions on over 10,000 visa interviews. They've interviewed tons of people. They have a lot of experience in this area. And the reason why this company got started is because we used to be so frustrated that people were unprepared at the visa window, which tends to, get their visa denied, or officers were putting those cases into 221G administrative processing, which, really delays you getting your visa. And so I think we also were frustrated by the fact that so many people were being taken advantage of overseas with promises of, okay, if you say this, you're going to get your visa. And we wanted to get out there and really set the record straight, give people honest information, honest advice, direct advice that's going to be accurate and helpful to you in your visa journey. And, it was a tough time during the pandemic where there wasn't a lot of visas issued, but now we're getting busier than ever. And every month we're helping hundreds of people just like yourselves, with the visa process. We really recommend that you work with us before your very first interview because that is when our advice is the most helpful. However, if you're someone who is stuck in a 221G administrative processing situation or you've had a previous denial, then I would extra recommend that you work with us because if you don't do something different, then you're bound to end up in the same situation, which is a waste of your money and your time. And we don't want that to happen to you. So you can find out more information about us. We love working with Chime coaching clients. And, I think Rob is going to have a link for you and how you can book a consultation with us.
Definitely. I'm just going to throw that in the chat right now. It's also in the video description. This is a direct access where you can start that conversation with Argo. You guys have different interview times, right? Like they can do 30, 45 minutes, 1 hour. So there's even different prices for different amounts of help that you need to get, correct?
That's absolutely right. We have three lengths of consultations. If you're a first-time applicant, probably 30 minutes is going to be enough for your situation. You want that extra confidence. You want to know exactly how to be proactive at your visa interview to succeed. And all the way to, if you've had problems in the past, you've had a visa revocation, an OPT scam situation, which we've done some videos on, which is unfortunate. A lot of students ended up in that situation. You probably need at least an hour. And I will say 45 minutes tends to be our most popular length, just because, you get a little bit more time to practice mock interviews to make sure you're ready.
Yeah. And what I love about Argo is you guys have such a diversity of experience. You have people that have served from countries all over the world. So there's a good chance that you can talk to someone who's been in your country. A lot of languages, so multilingual experience. And I think combined, you guys have done over millions of visa interviews, correct?
Yeah,
So
you're
much.
absolutely right, Rob. So right now we have 25 former consular officers. We've worked in 34 countries and we speak 10 languages. So if you're someone who
Wow.
feels more comfortable speaking in your native language or you want to do a combination of English and your native tongue, we can do that. I myself am fluent in Chinese, Mandarin Chinese. And so if you're someone who is watching from China and you need help, it's very likely that I'll be on the other end of your Argo consultation. So I look forward to working with you all.
Yeah. And happy Lunar New Year to everyone. The year of the rabbit, correct?
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Very funny. Yeah, Mandy and I were just talking about before this started and some of the fun traditions that her family's been doing for that. So I
Yeah.
love the cultural experience that you guys have that you also bring, not just the head knowledge, but actually being there and you can get where people are coming from.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was thinking that, Rob was wearing his red shirt today because we
Yeah.
just had Lunar New Year. And this is when Chinese people get together and celebrate with family and have hot pot, which is what I did. And, hopefully this is something that you got to celebrate with your families.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that, Mandy. We're going to jump into the live Q&A now. A couple ground rules first. If you keep putting the same question again and again and again and again, I'm not going to pick it. Just put it once, be patient. Also, when you put your questions, make sure that they're clear. Give context. The more detail you can give, the better we can respond to it. If it's a question that doesn't make sense, I'm not going to pick it. And also, one way you can support our channel is through Super Chats. And we're going to prioritize the Super Chat questions in this Q&A time. So let's get started. And Mandy, yeah, if there's any questions that stand out to you from the comment section, feel free to, we'll try and get those up there. So our first one we got here from Kaushik, someone who's single and unmarried, having a visa interview coming up on Feb 1st. So is being unmarried have any issues with being rejected for a B1 visa? This is tourist visa. Any tips for that?
Yeah, so I think whether or not you're married is one factor that the visa officer will look at the interview. So, you probably know a little bit about this already, but when you're applying for a visa, what the visa officer is looking for is whether or not you have ties to your home country. And having a spouse who is staying in your home country is generally considered a strong tie. So if you don't have that, then you'll want to bring up some of the more positive aspects of your case. Whether or not you have a good job, whether or not you own a house. These are also things that are considered good ties. So marriage is just one factor, and don't let that deter you. You just want to be extra prepared to highlight the other strengths in your case.
Definitely. Okay, here's another interesting one from Manju.
Mhm.
They said that if they heard that you don't show up for a visa interview, or so if you're a no-show or don't cancel it prior 24 hours, that you're not allowed to book for 120 days. The U.S. Embassy tweeted this. Any thoughts on how that works out?
Yeah. So this is one way that embassies and consulates have tried to limit people who don't show up. As you can imagine, everybody wants a visa appointment right now. So if you have one and you don't notify them and you don't show up, that is a missed opportunity for somebody else. And I think they're just trying to limit that from happening. So yes, I would absolutely believe that. So try to cancel if you can't come so they can give it to somebody else.
Definitely, yeah. We want to make sure all those slots are maximized.
Mhm.
Okay. A similar one here. 26-year-old, no kids. Someone's I think a CNA is a nurse or nurse's assistant trying to get B1,
Mhm.
B2.
Mhm.
Don't have kids, not married. Again, kind of that life stage status. How does that impact these B1, B2 visas?
Yeah. So this is just one other factor that the visa officer will look at. And while it isn't positive that you're not married and don't have kids, you can use other positive factors to try to outweigh that. So for a visa officer, it's always a balancing act. They're looking at the totality of the circumstances, looking at all of these different factors to determine whether or not you overcome that burden, whether or not you actually qualify. So again, if you're someone in this situation, I would highly recommend, you can do a prep session with Argo. We can, really find out about your life and figure out what are the strengths in your case that you can emphasize
Hmm.
at your visa interview.
Yeah. So this is a two-part one. First, Arpit's having 4 rejections so far for
Mm,
B1, B2. So the question is kind of how many chances do they get? Is there a certain number of chances of rejections that you get?
mm.
And then they're in the UK and applying for London, trying to come to the US.
Yeah, yeah. So first of all, Arpit, I'm very sorry that you've gotten denied 4 times. I know how hard it is for visa applicants who get denied, and usually they don't get an explanation for why they're denied. So first of all, there's no limit on the number of times you can
Mhm.
apply for a visa. So that's the good thing. You can always reapply. And while the State Department will tell you, hey, every time you apply, you'll get a fresh look at your application. In practice, I have not seen that to be true because
Mhm.
every time you go in for your visa interview, the officer will interview you and take notes. That's why they're typing and not looking at you. They're putting notes about your case in the application, and that will follow you around forever. And this is why, instead of just saying, okay, I'm going to try again and I'll do the same things and I'll, won't do any extra preparation, you're probably going to end up with the same result. So if you're someone who
Mhm.
has been denied before, definitely work with an expert to figure out, what is the issue with your case and how can you address that head on? How can you get your situation turned around? I will say that at Argo, we recently worked with someone who had 9 visa refusals and then did an Argo consultation and was able to get approved on their 10th try. We were very excited for this person.
Wow.
So there is hope, but don't just try to do the same old thing because you're going to get the same outcome. Do something different. Work with an expert.
Mhm. All right, this one's 3 parts here. Tanishka's saying for F1 visa, they got denied under 214B, very common denial.
Mm-hmm.
When they came back from California to visit family, they
Mm-hmm.
had graduated from California, doing their MBA on a day 1 CPT program.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're applying again, can't seem to get an appointment. MBA program is going to start in January. Now trying to come in the spring, and then they're from a decent family, and it was kind of a major shock. Not sure what to do, how to get appointments. Any tips for this situation?
Yeah, so it sounds like from this situation that for Tanish that uh, perhaps, and again, I don't have all the information, but he went to the U.S. On an F1 and then maybe changed status or stayed to vacation with family. I think visa officers are very sensitive to. When your situation changes. So, for example, if you went to the US on vacation and then you decided to stay and go to a day 1 CPT program, and then you come back later and do a visa interview, the visa officer is going to ask you about that because to them,
Mm.
it's very unusual for someone to go for one purpose and then end up staying for a longer period of time. Day 1 CPT programs are also could potentially be a red flag. These are programs where you can start working right away from the day one of your studies. And I know from experience that a lot of students who are, previously on OPT but weren't able to get their H-1B, selected in the lottery, they opt for these day one CPT programs. Just keep in mind that it's likely that your case will be scrutinized more. It doesn't mean that you necessarily will be denied outright, but you have to be prepared to answer some very tough questions about why you selected that program. So there's a lot of different issues in this situation that if I were doing a consultation with Tanish, I would be digging into, why he chose the program, what exactly was he doing with his family, how long did he stay there, and then coming up with a strategy on how to present that at his next interview. And of course, you'll want to get a visa appointment and hopefully qualify for an expedite, but that really depends on the situation. But this is how I would break the situation down.
Good thoughts, Mandy. Adrian is asking, what does it mean when my B1, B2 says canceled without predict? Is it possible this happened because of my first visa? I spent 5 months in the US. Is there a type of punishment for these cases? So yeah, what does it mean for predict?
Yeah. So actually, I think what she's saying is canceled without prejudice, which is a stamp that they put on your visa. So your visa can be canceled with prejudice or canceled without prejudice. Now, if it's canceled without prejudice, that is a good sign that you still have an opportunity to go to the US in the future. However, in this particular case, I would want to know why it was canceled. When was it canceled? Did you go in for an interview and it was canceled in front of you? Or was it when you went in for Dropbox for a different type of visa application that they canceled your B1, B2, and then also denied the current visa that you were applying for? So, and then I would also want to know, when you said you're going for a visit to the US the first time, did you say you're going for 2 weeks and then you ended up staying for 5 months? This is a big issue for consular officers. They will look through your application and see, oh, well, this person said they were going for vacation for 2 weeks, and then I'm checking their stamps. They stayed for 5 months. What were they doing there? Did they have a baby? Did they, do all of these things that they didn't disclose? So these are some of the issues that could come up. And I would really want to dig into those facts to figure out what would be the best strategy moving forward.
So it's with prejudice or without prejudice. And without prejudice means you're not canceled forever. You can always try again.
Yes, that's right.
Okay. Ooh, here's the good one I'm sure a lot of people are wondering about. Gaurav asks how to answer, why did you get denied last time in the DS-160 for your visa? They got the typical 214B with no reason specified.
Yeah. So to be honest, I think this question is a little bit unfair because when people are denied their visas, they're 99% of the time, they're not given a reason for why they're denied. And so I think this is an opportunity for the visa officer to find out why you think you're denied. And what I generally recommend for people is to just put something very simple like denied under section 214B or 214B denial. And the best way to address that prior denial is in person at your actual visa interview. And, at an Argo consultation, we would share with you how to do that. How do you bring that up? I think that it is always more effective to do it in person versus writing out a long rambling message about why you're denied when you probably don't even know the reason. So better to just keep it simple and then explain the denial once you have more context as to why you were denied. And you really want to be, prepared for that explanation to give yourself the best chances of getting approved on your next try.
All right. Victory. Applied for a B1, B2 visa and got rejected, and then got admissions to study, and then unfortunately got rejected. So very sorry to hear about that. So the question is there chances? Obviously, with every refusal, the chances of rejection again is going to increase unless major things changes. But yeah, what thoughts do you have on this, Mandy?
Yeah. So Victory, Rob is absolutely right. Every time you get denied a visa, it makes it harder for you to get a visa in the future. So you really want to be prepared to, to maximize your success at your next at your next visa interview. And the reason why that is because every time you interview, as I mentioned, there are notes that get put in the system about your case. And so when you've been interviewed by 2 or 3 different officers with different notes, you've already had 2 officers decide that you're not qualified for a visa, which means that the next officer who sees your case is going to be like, gosh, like 2 of my colleagues have already decided this person doesn't qualify. I'm not going to change those decisions. I'm going to just go along with everybody else's decision unless something major has changed, unless you have a new strategy, unless you have a way to get more positive aspects of your case in front of the visa officer. So for your specific case, I would highly recommend an Argo consultation because it's really hard to know what your strategy should be without really doing that time one-on-one with you and figuring out your personal situation. So again, if you're someone who has been denied, you won't get that changed unless you really know how to handle your next visa interview and preparing a different way.
That's great. Okay, this is a unique one. So someone's applying for an F1 visa the first time, but they're applying from China, which isn't their native country. So they're going from an alternative. What's the term you use for that?
Yeah, you're applying as a third country national.
Yeah,
That's what
so
they call
third
them.
country national, first time for F1 visa. What tips would you have for someone in this kind of situation?
Yeah, so I think the first thing I would want to know is why are you applying from China? Are you studying in China? I know there's a lot of international med students studying in China, and if that's the case, that looks really great. There's a good reason you're in China versus, you're just there for some random reason. The second thing to know is that your case is likely to be scrutinized more because you will be holding a passport that they're not very familiar with. When you're a consular officer working in China, you're very used to the life situations of Chinese citizens, but maybe not from some other country. So you're likely to get scrutinized more. If you're not prepared for your interview and you don't give them the information that they're looking for, one unfortunate situation that can happen from third country national interviews is they could say, you know what, I'm not the best visa officer for this case. I would highly recommend you go back to your home country and apply. And they'll deny your case and tell you to go back to your home country to apply, which, as you can imagine, then you're going to have to spend another, $160, and then wait for another appointment. And that's unfortunate. So for TCN appointments, third country national appointments, do extra preparation to make sure that you're setting yourself up for success and not failure.
Yeah, so there's definitely a possibility for more questions, more scrutiny in that kind of situation.
Yes.
Okay, that's good to know. Okay, here's another interesting F1 visa question. Someone who's a minor, so just a teenager, 14 years old. That's more kind of, middle school, high school age. They want to go study, play basketball. What tips would you have for minors who are trying to come across on an F1 student visa, or our typical, college student?
Yeah, I would say if you're younger, you're only 14, you really want to make sure that you emphasize things about your parents' work. One thing that I noticed interviewing younger visa applicants when I was a visa officer is a lot of times they had no idea what their parents did for work. And the reason why the visa officer wants to know is because they want to know that your parents make enough money to send you abroad to play basketball, to study, and they need to know, how many years has your dad been at his job? What are his responsibilities? Is he a manager? Has he been promoted? And so these are things that you'll want to ask your parents beforehand. Do they own the house that you're living in? And so I think for kids who are younger, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage if you don't know anything about what your parents do. And I know that's very common. Our parents work all the time. What do they do? But ask them about the specifics because that is something that you'll want to describe and tell the visa officer.
Good thoughts. All right, this one. I got a friend in the Philippines who has a visa interview coming, owns their own home, has their own business. So we can't tell you whether they're going to get denied or not. Those are good things for home ties, but what's more important than what your status is how you communicate it, how you answer those questions, how you tell the story of why you're going, how long are you going, what's your purpose, and then telling what your life is like in your home country. Those things are more important than just these facts. I don't know, Mandy, what else you would want to add to that?
Yeah, I think that's such a good point, Rob. you would be surprised with the clients that we work with at Argo, how many people have really great things happening in their life, like owning their own home and owning their own business, but they never even get a chance to bring that up at their visa interview if they're being passive. Most people go into the interview and they just wait to be asked a question and then they answer only that question. It's so important to be proactive, to bring these things up in advance in a way that, isn't pushy, but just naturally kind of goes with the flow of the interview. It is a little bit nuanced, so I would highly recommend, preparing for it, because so many people tell me, yeah, I was asked one or two questions and they didn't even ask me this and I was denied. So you have a very short amount of time to put your best foot forward, to put the best facts from your life, share that with the visa officer in a way that will be understood. So just make sure you take advantage of that time.
Yeah, telling your story in a clear way is very important. Lots of practice. Okay, we got Safal here asking about TOEFL scores. TOEFL is an English proficiency test people have to take for their U.S. admissions, especially for F1 visas. And so, how might this impact? I mean, my first thought is, well, they're going to see that. Maybe they'll see it or not. I don't know. Depends if they ask about that. I don't know if those get put on the DS 160. But more important is your spoken English communication. But yeah, what are your thoughts on this, Mandy?
Yeah, so it's not on the DS 160 application, but visa officers will ask about TOEFL scores. And they
Okay.
actually tend to ask only when your English during the interview is not very good. So
Hmm.
if you're someone who has excellent English and you've already been practicing and you've been taking classes and you can communicate directly and very clearly, then it's very possible that you'll just pass your interview without even a mention of TOEFL. When they ask you your TOEFL score, it's because you are already having some trouble being very clear at the interview. And unfortunately, sometimes this is a way that they ask you a question so that they can have a basis for denying your visa.
Hmm.
So you'll want to make sure that you're ready for the interview in English. This is especially true for F1 visas. You will be interviewed in English, even if you're going for an ESL program. You want to make sure that you have, you're ready to have at least a short conversation in spoken English with the officer, which will prove your intention to study English in the US. And it really means a lot to the visa officer and shows that you're trying very hard.
Sounds good. This one's interesting about extensions. So someone had a B1, B2 last year in America. They left, applied for an extension, um, and then they got declined. So they left before, doing that. And then they got the answer back from USCIS just this last year. So, yeah, what can people do with these extension situations when they've had a visa before, but then don't get the extension?
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard to say because it might be something that has happened in the meantime since you've reapplied again. And so I think it would be hard to know exactly what this person should do next without knowing what happened, because you'll really want to address what happened that caused you to be denied the second time, before you uh, got denied. So just make sure that you know what the issue is, and
Hmm.
to understand that, we'll need more facts from you.
Yeah, yeah. And this is cool. The same person cell, they booked consult with Argo. So just a little shout out to you guys that they felt relieved. It was worth it. So just a little testimonial here from someone here in the audience saying how Argo has really helped them get peace, get clarity. That's the big goal of what Argo coaches are going to help you guys do. So, all right, lots of good questions here. Okay. Um, So here's someone that wasn't able to show up due to a medical emergency. You know, life happens, and they didn't cancel the visa either. Um, so yeah, what are some clarification there for their F1 visa if they have like a medical emergency, things like that?
Yeah, so Manju, I would reach out to the embassy or consulate where you're applying, and when you are rescheduling, send them correspondence, send them an email, and I would actually attach, if you have any proof of your medical emergency, say you went to the hospital or you had to do a specific doctor's visit, that will really help prove that you weren't able to make the visa appointment and this wasn't your own choice. This was just something that came out of nowhere. That will really help, because so many people are flaky and they just don't show up. And then, that appointment wasn't able to be used by someone else, which really upsets the embassies and consulates. So you want to, definitely apologize for what happened and show proof that you weren't able to make your interview.
Great. Yeah. Communicate the issues and hopefully people will be able to understand and help out there. All right. Going to H-1Bs now. Any changes to the H-1B lottery system this year for candidates, with advanced degrees, maybe like a master's, PhD?
Yeah. So no changes this year from last year. The H-1B lottery is always, it is what it is. It's tough. I think only 1 in 3 people get selected in the lottery, but hopefully you have multiple chances and I wish you the best of luck.
Mm-hmm. Definitely is a lottery. It's a gamble and, you can try and see what happens. Okay. Rog is asking about these third country national applications for petition-based work visas. What's a petition-based work visa?
Yeah, so that would be like an H-1B or an L-1,
Okay.
Anything that comes with something already being approved by USCIS beforehand. And I will say
Mm-hmm.
that third country national applications, they're just challenging because you're applying outside of your home country with a visa officer that doesn't really understand people from your background. That's the main challenge. Now, if you're
Mm-hmm.
applying for a petition-based work visa, say you work for a big company like, Apple or Schlumberger or Amazon, then it probably will give you a better chance because those companies are so well known. But it will be tougher if you're applying for an L1, for example, an L1 individual petition from a company that the officer isn't going to know.
Yeah. So here's one I want to address. Prashish, thanks for asking. What in your F1 student visa interview, what's the correct way to answer why USA? I want to say something. Please don't take this the wrong way. But if you aren't able to answer this question yourself, you probably shouldn't be coming to America. America's great for studies and for work, but you need to be able to answer that. Like if you can't confidently answer it yourself, then maybe rethink if you can't answer why, there's no, then you can't do the what. So it's great to practice. There isn't any right or wrong answer. Like you can't have a script for this answer because it should be your answer. Mandy, myself, we can't tell you the correct answer because it's got to be your answer. You can get coaching, you can get feedback, you can get advice and practice it. But if you have to have someone else to give you this answer, then you probably shouldn't be coming to America. Mandy, anything you'd want to add to that?
Yeah, just, adding to what you said, you really want to be authentic in this answer and think about what are the reasons why you wanted to choose the US. And this is what the visa officer wants to know as well. Just don't use a canned response, don't
Mm-hmm.
recite statistics from your college brochure. Anything that is memorized will be very obvious to the visa officer. So really think about your why.
Definitely. So someone received an email from the U.S. Embassy that their interview date changed. What might cause that, or what are some reasons for that?
Yeah, there's a lot of things happening behind the scenes at embassies and consulates right now. They're really short staffed. They're moving appointments around to accommodate more people. For example, in the next few months, they're probably going to be prioritizing student visas. So they might move your visa appointment if it's not a student visa. There could be any number of reasons, but I don't think this is anything negative. This is just something that they had to do.
Yeah. So don't worry of it being a bad thing for you, just more their process and procedures.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So a good question here. The most common rejection is 214B rejection.
Mhm.
It's a very unclear rejection. We already talked about it a little bit in our webinar today. One thing I'll mention is Ben, another Argo Visa officer, him and I have made a video digging deep into this. It's one of our most viewed video with hundreds and thousands of views on, what to do once you've been rejected, how to answer that in a visa interview. So check that video out. I'm sure it'll clear your doubts. But Mandy, what would be a tip for this when someone gets that 214B? What should be that first step they consider?
Okay, so first step you should do is to write down every question you were asked in the visa interview and what your answers were. This is going to be really important when you're preparing for your next interview. And then step number 2 is to work with an expert from Argo so that you can understand the exact reason why you were denied. The only person who will know is probably somebody who's been a consular officer, who's made those decisions and know exactly what happened. I know when I work with clients and they're like, I have no idea why I was denied. When we walk through what questions they were asked and what the answers were, I know with almost certainty, okay, these are the issues and here's how you can address this at your next interview. I would not recommend that you go back in there and just try again, because you won't know why you were denied and you're not going to be able to address that issue. So those are the 2 steps I would recommend.
Fantastic. So I've seen a couple of questions about this, kind of pursuing multiple visas at once. So this one's asking, does the visa officer have a record of us applying, for a diversity DV lottery visa? And will that get brought up in our F1 visa interview? And someone else asked similar, Gabriel asked, can someone be denied an F1, if they've already applied for the American DV lottery? So can multiple visas in process have an impact? Do they know? Tell us about that.
Yeah. So it depends on which step you're in the DV lottery. If you've been selected for the DV lottery, then it will show up in the system. However, if you've only just applied and then you immediately apply for a student visa, they're not going to be able to see that. So it really depends on which stage you're in the process. And applying for the DV lottery or having an open immigrant visa petition doesn't necessarily mean that you won't be able to get an F1 visa, but you will have a tougher interview and the officer will want to know what your plans are, given that you've already applied to immigrate. Because one of the biggest determinations they're trying to make is whether or not you have non-immigrant intent. You're not intending to permanently go to the US. And so that's going to look, very odd to the visa officer, and you'll want to be prepared to explain that. So we've helped a lot of clients be able to successfully get their visas, even though they already have pending immigrant visas. And so this is going to be a tough one. So you want to do extra preparation.
Okay. Here's one about community colleges. They've got an admission to a community college. They have a plan of maybe transferring to a bigger 4-year university. People have definitely done that. That's a normal thing in America. What kind of impact would that have, in your visa interview and going to a community college and maybe hoping to transfer someday? What can they think about?
Yeah. So first of all, keep in mind that if you're going to a community college, when you apply for your visa, you will have a tougher interview. And this isn't because visa officers are, against community colleges. I think it's just that they know that the standards at community colleges, the acceptance standards, are lower than at a 4-year university. So they kind of take it upon themselves to do further vetting to make sure that you actually qualify for a visa. Secondly, is if you're going to a community college, you really want to speak to what your longer term plans are. I know a lot of people do community colleges and they're in some sort of 2+2 program where, maybe after 2 years, they'll transfer to a 4-year university. You definitely want to bring that up at your visa interview. And so what your longer term goals are. Once you graduate, will you come back to your home country? Are you going to finish with a 4-year degree? Figure that out and make sure that you can explain that clearly to the visa officer.
Great. Here's a really good detailed question. Someone wants to travel for a business visa to attend a film festival in March. They own their own production house, so they ask about bank statements. Should they provide their own or their company? So yeah, what kind of documents, especially financial documents, are helpful for visa interviews and business trips?
Yeah, I would definitely bring your company's bank statement. It's possible that they won't ask to see it. It all depends on how you handle the visa interview. But if they do ask to see it, then at least you have it. My recommendation is that you put extra preparation in how you present yourself and what your company does, because if you do that part really well, they're not going to ask for any documents. They only ask for documents when they have a lot of doubt about your business or your intentions. And that's when when visa officers look for documents, that actually is not a good sign, because it means that they're just
Mm,
looking for maybe something to back up not giving you a visa. So prepare the right way and you won't even need any documents, because visa officers hate looking at documents.
yeah. And I know one tip that you guys have mentioned as well is when you show up, just don't shove all your documents into the counter or the face of the visa officer. Only give them when they request it, correct?
Yes, that's right. That's a big pet peeve of visa officers.
hmm Okay. Here's one, kind of thinking of options. I have a last chance to apply for H1 lottery this year. If they don't get picked up, what options should they consider for continuing their employment? I'm guessing in America.
Yeah. So there are a lot of options that are open to you, and it really depends on your background. If you're someone who's just had a bachelor's degree, maybe it would make sense for you to go back to school at this time and get your master's or your PhD. That's one option. Depending on what country you're from, the EB3 visa for unskilled labor could be an option. I think that this is when you would really want to sit down with either an immigration attorney, or you can talk to one of our Argo officers to talk about
hmm
what are the different options that you have. But it really depends on your situation.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see here. Try not to repeat the same ones again. Um, So Saurav said after their H1 refusal, visa officer suggested improving some things. Here in Nepal, they think maybe changing the I-20 with more scholarship or less COA. Not sure what COA stands for. We'll give more chances afterwards. Um, so yeah, what would a visa officer be thinking, and what would some of those major improvements need to be?
Yeah, I think this is a very common mistake people make. They think that after they get denied a visa, as long as they change their funding, maybe if they're being funded by an uncle instead of their, father, it would make a difference. Maybe they should change their schools. Nothing could be further from the truth. When you're denied under 214B, it's usually multiple factors that has caused that denial. And instead of just changing which school you're going to, or changing your scholarship amount, which to a visa officer doesn't really make any sense, because you were given this amount of scholarship. How can you all of a sudden change that amount? What that
hmm
will say to them instead is that you're just trying to look for any way at all to get to the United States, and you don't want them to think that. I would actually recommend that you double down. There must be a good reason why you chose that school in the first place, the scholarship, and really think about changing how you frame your situation and how you talk about your situation. That's probably where the problem lies. So, again, in this situation, it's probably a good idea to have an Argo consultation so we can know about the specifics of your case and how you can bring the strengths of your case to the forefront.
Yeah. You guys, if you're learning some great stuff from Mandy, again, make sure you like this video, give her some love in the comments. We've been just crossed an hour. Mandy, I don't want to respect your time. How much more time or how many questions are you willing to do before we have to wrap this up? Because I want to respect your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do 3 or 4 more questions. Let's just
Okay,
round it out.
great. I'll pick a few more good ones. Kaushik, good question here. This can be quick. They're planning to attend a business trip. Which the correct one to apply for, B1 or B2?
Yeah, so actually, they usually give the B1, B2 as a combined visa. So see if you can just select that option as a B1, B2. You can use it for business or tourism.
Okay, great. Let's see here. So many questions here, a lot of them getting repeated. So,
Yeah, I see that.
uh, all right, let's see if you can help with this one here from Katarina. C1D visa, but it has annotations from a previous employer company. Can they work on the same visa for a different company, or do they need to apply for a new C1D visa?
I would highly recommend that you apply for a new visa. Now, for certain visa categories, like for the H-1B, for example, I was just looking at this regulation yesterday. If you have an existing visa with a different employer name, You can technically use it for a new employer if you have new paperwork. But what I always tell clients is even if the regulations say one thing, it really depends on the officer. And sometimes they don't always follow the rules because they're not aware of all of the rules. So,
Mm-hmm.
to make things extra clear, to not have any issues, if you have a new employer, I would recommend that you get a new visa with your new employer's name just to make it simple and less hassles in the future.
Mm-hmm. All right. So this person says one of the reasons, besides wanting to visit the U.S., just getting a U.S. visa, is getting advantage of interning in many countries without a visa or a visa on arrival. Is it okay to mention something like that in their visa interview?
Yeah, I think so. And I think, maybe you'd want to talk about which country you would want to intern in where, having a US visa would help you in some way. Visa officers love specific answers. They like specific numbers, they like knowing specific details. So instead of being
Hmm.
vague and saying, oh, this could help in some way, you want to give them a very clear picture of why this would be helpful to you. But if that is the reason why you want a US visa, yeah, that's a good reason.
Okay. This one's interesting, Vimana. It's about personality during soft skills. So they're a blunt, straightforward person, with their words, maybe more kind of a stern face, not smiling. Can that impact a visa interview? How do visa officers want a person to interact with their personality?
Yeah, I love this question because this is rarely brought up about visa interviews, but I do think it's important. And so I would say that for the duration of your visa interview, it's just a few minutes, do your best to try to engage with the visa officer, look them in the eye, smile a little bit, be friendly, be polite. Those things go a long way. So if you are someone who tends to be very aggressive or very blunt, try to not be like that at least for a few minutes. I do think that is important. And we're always telling our clients, how do you have that rapport, that great back and forth energy with the visa officer where they want to listen to you? Your job at that visa interview is to get the visa officer to like you and to want to help
Mm.
you and to want to approve your visa.
Okay. We haven't said anything about the CR1 visa yet, so I thought we'd throw this one up there. Margaret's their last step waiting for an embassy appointment for the CR1. It's been
Mm.
6 months, doing it on their own. What tips for their interview? They're 3 years married. Can you explain what the CR1 visa is?
Yeah, so this is when you are married to an American citizen and you're applying for a visa to join them in the US. And my tips for this type of interview is to have some very specific examples of your relationship. So, for example, a common question asked in this type of interview is, how did you and your husband meet? And you'll want to be specific. Yeah, we met because friends introduced us. I think so many people are not used to talking about their personal relationship that they don't give a
Mm.
very good answer. But these officers are really looking for specifics to make them understand, how did you guys connect? And you're trying to share with them that the relationship is real. And so give details to support that.
Sounds good. Mandy, you're getting some great feedback. So people are saying thanks. You've been answering these in great ways. Looks like some people are already booking consultations to get help from you and other Argo officers. So again, we'll have links in the video description if you guys want to connect, get answers, be better do mock interviews and practice your answers. I think that's one of the best values that they offer as well. And so thank you guys. Thank you so much. Mandy, how do you want to wrap up? What do you want to say to our friends who've been tuning in today?
I just want to say thank you so much for coming to spend time with us and talking about your visa issues. I really hope that we can be a resource for you. I know that the US visa and immigration journey is not easy, and you don't have to do it by yourself. We're here to support you and looking forward to seeing you on our Argo platform.
Yes, all the links that you need, all the resources are in the video description. Mandy, thanks so much. Everyone, thanks for being part of the Chine Coaching community. If this video was helpful, share it with another friend because I'm sure it can help other people. We'll see y'all next time at Chine Coaching. Cheers, everyone. Have a great 2023 and let us know when you get those visas approved. Bye, everybody.
Bye.